Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast, as we're now going to be diving into the Buffalo Bills situation as they are coming off of a Monday Night Football win against the New York Jets. And just as of 30 minutes ago or so, we got the news that they are adding to their team, trading for wide receiver Amari Cooper. And I think that this was the right deal for them. Last night, overall, I thought was a pretty good game for them. You can absolutely make the argument that they could have very easily come out of that game with a loss had the Jets, just sort of executed better down the stretch, especially with those missed field goals. But I continue to be impressed with the way that the Bills have come out early on in this season. And I know the losses against the Ravens and the Texans were very ugly for them. And I think coming out of that as well, sort of tying this into, the news of this afternoon, is the fact that they really were without a legitimate number one option for Josh Allen, and he was feeling that, where he has had moments of excellence up to this point in the year. I mean, through the first few weeks, it was looking like he was going to be the front runner for MVP before the recent, fall off of sorts, but I still think he is playing pretty good football overall. And that being said, as much as he's playing well, he's not turning the ball over for the most part. He did have a fumble that in the red zone that almost was very costly for them, but they were able to at least get back on it. I believe they ended up capping off that drive with a touchdown as well. So, maybe get out of some of those mistakes. Josh Allen still has a little bit of that wild factor in his DNA, but 0 interceptions through 6 weeks. That has been one of the biggest complaints and critiques of him over the past handful of years, and he is playing smarter with the football. Now, part of that in turn is the fact that he hasn't been as aggressive and he hasn't been putting up the same yardage as the offense has been a little bit more sluggish. Josh Allen is passing for just 193 pass yards per game, which is his lowest mark since 2019. Now, we're only 6 games into the season, so there is time to resurrect this, but clearly this Bills offense was not operating at the same degree as what the organization was hoping for coming into this year. In steps Amari Cooper, who, we'll see exactly what type of impact that he has. I think that there are, if you're going to compare it to the Jets deal with Devontae Adams, yes, clearly Amari Cooper is not quite that level, but the Bills at least get a more consistent threat out on the perimeter, where last night you look at it, and even with Josh Allen feeling like he was controlling the game early on, he accounted for all 3 of the touchdowns that the Bills scored in the first half. He still finished the game with just 215 yards. Now again, playing mistake-free, which is a big step for Josh Allen, especially if there aren't going to be quite as many of those big plays. I mean, we've still seen some of them. There was, of course, the one scrambling out of his own end zone, hitting Ray Davis down the field. But, when Ray Davis, your running back, is your leading receiver with 55 yards, it's not quite going. The offense isn't functioning at the level that they were hoping for. And they needed to actually go out and get a perimeter threat. Khalil Shakir is somebody that I do like, and I think he has been emerging for the Bills step by step, really from about halfway through the 2023 season. Wasn't enough, though, clearly. So they get a little bit aggressive, and, they ultimately, I was just looking during the break there, and they're not going to be on the books for much of Cooper's contract at all here, where I want to pull up some of the reporting here from, Field Yates, the fact that Cooper had just restructured a deal, and the Bills are only going to be paying him $807,000 for this season. So a pretty nice cheap pickup, especially considering they're trading a 3rd and a 7th round pick, I believe it is. One in 2025, one in 2027. This is immediate help for them. To what degree, we will have to see ultimately, but I think it's a win for them. But The reason why I think I have been so optimistic about the Bills is because they have been able to function without Josh Allen being a total superstar that's dominating everything. I mean, their running attack over the past season and a half now has been much improved with James Cook as the lead back for them, but even last night, he's not available. He's dealing with a toe foot injury. Ray Davis comes in and 20 carries, 97 yards, averaging almost 5 yards per carry. He's involved in the passing game a little bit as well. Like, they have a very good offensive line, now a reliable enough rushing attack. And then you look at the defense as well, and for however much turnover they had from last year to this year, it's not just that they're surviving these games, but their defense actually is playing very well, in my opinion. And it starts with the secondary, because that's where they lost so many pieces from last season. And now you look at it, you have Damar Hamlin and Taylor Rapp, who are emerging into actual starting caliber safeties, where, Rapp was sort of flying all over the field last night. Hamlin as well, involved in some crucial plays. You look at, they got nickelback Taron Johnson back from injury, and he ends up having the game-sealing interception against Rodgers late in that fourth quarter. So, I mean, this is actually now a very talented Bills defense, and they're definitely lacking some experience coming into this year. But, again, Rapp, Hamlin, Johnson, you have from the linebacker position as well. They haven't even really missed Matt Milano. Against that Ravens game, yes, definitely, and the fact that they were also without their other starting linebacker in Terrell Bernard, who is since back and playing pretty well for them. But Dorian Williams, a second-year linebacker, I believe, out of Tulane, second-year linebacker out of Tulane. He's definitely been catching my eye in terms of how he sort of flies around in that front seven. Don't know what he can provide from a coverage standpoint at this point. It's not like I've grinded a ton of film on him, but he stood out as well. They have good edge rushers on the front line. They have, at least a man in the middle to, some degree or whatnot on that defensive side of the ball with Ed Oliver. This is a pretty impressive Bills group, and I've definitely come around on Sean McDermott as a coach based off of what he's been able to help this Bills defense into. And now that they have Amari Cooper, this is a situation where I feel like they can really start to take leaps forwards at this point. Now again, Amari Cooper, it's not like he is a top 10 wide receiver in the league, at least as of this current moment, in my opinion. If you disagree in the comment section, feel free to let me know. But I do think that, being able to add a more dynamic perimeter player, that brings back the passing attack a little bit more. That's where I think we can see Khalil Shakir succeed a little bit more. Obviously, so much attention on Stephon Diggs last year. And, it's not like Shakir's been invisible for them this season. But I think at this point in his career at least, where it's still a young career, but I think that we do understand that Shakir probably has some ways to go before being a legitimate number one wide receiver, if he ever does reach that. Keon Coleman as well, the wide receiver out of Florida State that they drafted this past season. I wasn't huge on Coleman coming into this year. I think he has all the physical tools, and he needs to sharpen up in terms of the route running aspect of things. He eventually can be a weapon for them, but he's more of an explosive play guy for them at the current moment. They need more players that can be on a down-to-down basis a threat. And I feel like, honestly, Cooper and Dalton Kincaid are going to be the two who can sort of emerge as those reliable pieces for Josh Allen as they try and, push forward here. But, I think they're in a very good position. And, again, overall last night, was it the most convincing win in the world for the Bills? Definitely not. But I think there's also still a lot to build on, and really, they just this morning addressed what I believe is the biggest issue with this Bills team, and that is the lack of receiving weapons for them. So, we'll see how this ages, but again, this is a low-risk move for the Bills, addresses their number one need at this current point, and it's coming off of the heels of them beating their number one competitor for the division in the AFC East this year. I think the Bills are in a great position as of this current moment, and I'm excited to see sort of what Cooper in this offense looks like. But let me know what your thoughts are, both on last night's win and the Amari Cooper deal that was just broken this morning. But it has just been crazy news flying off the shelves for us as we talked about Adams and the trade to the Jets. We're talking about Cooper to the Bills. And then sort of under the radar with all of this is the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers are also making a change, this time at quarterback, where despite starting the season 4-2 and Justin Fields playing pretty well up to this point, the Steelers are now, with Russell Wilson fully healthy, making the switch back to him for their upcoming game against the Jets in Week 7. So we are going to be evaluating whether or not this is the right decision as of this current moment and what the Steelers' offense could look like with Russell Wilson in comparison to what we saw from Fields through the first 6 weeks. So we are going to be diving into that, but before we do so, we are going to take a quick break. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.